Hi, I'm Jared Falk, and today I'm going to show you exactly how I tune my bass drum. Now, the reason I say show is because everyone tunes their bass drum a little bit differently, and some drummers will say you must do it this way, and some drummers will say you must do it this way, but really, we all have our own unique sound, and we all do things a little bit differently. So I'm not necessarily going to teach you how to tune the bass drum, I'm just going to show you how I tune mine. So I hope that makes sense. First of all, you'll notice here I'm using an Evans EMAD drum head. Now I'm going to actually be replacing this drum head with the exact same head. Okay, now an EMAD is a 10 mil head, one ply, and it actually has an external interchangeable dampening system. I hope that made sense there. Which means it has these rings that you can put on the outside of the drum, and I can choose to have this size of ring, or I can choose to have a larger ring, okay? I actually don't need this in here anymore because I'm going to take this off anyway. All right, and then you'll notice on this head I also have an EQ patch, and that's just something to protect the head. This one was actually put on after I put this big dent in the head, okay? So I'd recommend getting one of those before you actually start to play the drum. So for now, I'm just going to show you exactly how I take off the drum head. I basically just take a drum key and do a quarter or half turn all the way around the drum, all right? This is just to get it to the point where the head becomes loose, or the tension rods become loose, or T-rods, whatever you want to call them, and then I can just take them off by hand. All right, now that I've loosened all the tension rods, I'm basically just going to take them all off, okay? Not everyone would do this, but with the bass drum, this is something that I like to do. Just take them all off on the ground, and then I just take my rim off. Put this on the ground, and then just remove the head, okay? There's the old drum head. You can choose to do with those whatever you want, all right? So now that I got the drum head off, I'm just going to kind of make sure there's no big chunks or anything on the outside edge. You know, some dust there. You can do this with a cloth or whatever, and this is always a good time to polish your drums. So if you want to do that, that's totally fine. For the sake of time and for the sake of these videos, just to keep them kind of shorter, I'm not going to actually polish my drums right now. All right, so now that I got this, I'm just going to grab the other head. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my Evans is right at the top and centered. I'm so OCD when it comes to this sort of thing. Okay, make sure that's the top and centered. Now, when doing the bass drum, a lot of bass drums actually have a little piece of rubber on here, and this is where the bass drum actually clamps to the rim. And so you want to make sure that that stays at the bottom of the drum, okay? So don't put it at the top, because then you're going to be clamping your bass drum to the nice lacquered part, especially on expensive drums like this. Okay, so now make sure that's right on the bottom. Centered. I usually look in between. There's two lugs here, so if I just center it in between there, I know that that's where the bass drum is going to sit, and that's where the pedal is actually going to clamp. Okay? So there we go. Now, as far as seating the drum head, this is something we do. This is something I do with snare drums, where I put my fist in the middle and actually stretch the drum head. I'm not going to do that with the bass drum head. I never really do. Some of you guys might say, "Oh, that's wrong. You should do it." And that's fine. If you want to do it, go ahead and do that. So now I'm just going to put these all back on top. All right, and I'm just going to hand tighten them as tight as I can go, just with my hands. Now it's important, you guys, if you, a lot of these have washers on there. You see like a little plastic washer here. Okay, make sure that when you take off the drum, you don't ever lose any of this stuff, okay? This stuff is what keeps the tension, what holds the tension, and it's all kind of necessary to keep your drums in tune, keep your drums sounding the best. Okay, so now I have all the tension rods hand tightened. I'm going to take my drum key, and I'm just going to move around the drum, and I'm going to do around a half a turn on each one. All right, now with bass drum tuning, you don't necessarily want to always tune to a tone like we do with toms, or even sometimes we do with our snare drum and stuff. We more want that kind of low-end thump, or that oomph, right? And so you don't want to just crank it up as tight as you can go. You want it to have a lot of flex. So when you hit it, you don't have this long sustain. And we're going to talk a little bit more about muffling as well when I actually put the resonant head on. Talk about what we do to trying to chop off the sustain or how we actually want it to sound. We don't want it to sound boing unless you are, specifically looking for that sound in some sort of orchestral music or some sort of jazz band or something like that, unless they've requested that. But for most pop music and for most music and studios or bands that you go and play with, you're going to want sort of a specific just pop sound, okay? Now this, for me, from my experience, this tension is a little bit loose still. So I'm just going to go around the drum one more time. Now another thing I wanted to mention, guys, is I'm a little bit old school. A lot of people like to use like a Tama tension watch, and that actually measures the tension of each tension rod, so you can always get the exact same tension. So I can tune it here to like whatever it is, 15, tune it here to 15, here to 15, kind of just like a tire pressure gauge. But in this case, I just tune it to my ear. If it sounds good, I like it. And that might be old school. You guys might want to try those tools, and that's totally cool. For these applications, I'm not gonna do that. Another thing you guys might have problems with is you might get ripples around the drum, and that could be any number of things. The bass drum hoop could be warped. It could be way tighter on one side and way looser on the other. And it's hard to actually tell you exactly what you need to do to get rid of that ripple. But let's say there were a ripple right here, and there was none over here. What I would do is I would tune up this one and these two around it. I would just crank those up a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. Okay? And from here, you guys, that's all I do. You might want to tap and make sure that the tension is even and that the tone is even. But for me, that is all I do. And that's why I absolutely love these drum heads. So I'm going to flip the drum over. I'm going to put on a new resonant head, and then I'm going to show you how it sounds and tweak it, and we can talk a little bit about what I'm doing there. So now I'm ready to tune the resonant side of my bass drum. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the batter side and just slowly loosen all the tension rods. Okay, so now that I have all the tension rods off, I'm just going to remove the old drum head. All right, and now you're going to see some of my muffling I have in here, okay? A black sheet, a white sheet. This is kind of lighter fabric. And then I have something called an EQ pad. Now this is something that Velcros on the inside of my bass drum, and there's Velcro strips here, and then this sits up against the batter side of the head. And I like it because the beater, would hit right around here, on the batter side. And so it's kind of provides really, really good controlled muffling. Every time I hit the drum, this thing actually moves, and so it probably pops off the head a little bit every single time. So it gives a little bit of that body and a little bit of resonance. Okay, so I'm just going to put that back in. And these, I'm going to show you what I'll do with these. Actually, I should do that now. Okay, so what I normally do is, because this drum I've been moving it around and stuff, these have kind of gone all over the place in the drum. But I'll put it like that. I'm just going to set this on the inside of the drum. Okay? And that's what I do there. And then this, I'm going to show you once I actually put on the new reso head, because this is actually going to sit on the resonant side. Now, the resonant side head I'm using is an EQ3 Evans resonant head, and this is a 1-ply 7mm drum head. Okay? Now, it also has a ring, an internal kind of dampening ring. This is just to kind of control the overtones. Because what I find happens with the resonant heads is you sometimes get this kind of waffly sound. You know what I mean? Like every time you hit the drum. And so I think this ring really kind of helps control that. Now what I'm going to do, just again, I want this centered on the bottom. Okay, on the batter side it was centered on the top. So I'm going to center it on the bottom. And like I said, you guys can always polish your drums at this time. It's a great time to do that. Okay, so put that on. Now let's put the T-rods back on. Okay, so this just fell out. Like I said about these, let's make sure that we keep that washer on there. Now, just like the batter side, we're going to hand tighten all these. Now I have all of the tension rods hand tightened, okay? And even with this one, I had to use this thing because I guess the tension rod probably needs some oil or something like that, which is something I'd normally do because it was kind of sticking, so I couldn't actually do it with my hands, so I just used the drum key. Now, one thing I want to say about the resonant head is I like to tune it higher than the batter head, and that's fine. What I find is if it's too loose, you kind of get that waffly sound that I was talking about earlier, and so I like to tune it up a little bit higher, get a little bit more tone out of the drum, a little bit more body, I find, and then I actually put this on the inside. I'll do it once I set the drum down. I put this on the inside, and it sits against this side of the drum head. And I just think it controls it really, really well. It's still, the drum still has a lot of body, a lot of tone, and a ton of punch, okay? So now that I got these hand tightened, I'm going to go around, just tighten these up. Okay, so that feels right for me. Now, one thing I'm noticing here is there's a little ripple up top here. I don't know if you guys can see it in the cameras. And this is something I talked about on the batter side. Because of the external damping system that the EMAD comes with, you don't even really notice it, and it's never really an issue. But on these single-ply heads, without any sort of external dampening stuff on the outside, you sometimes will get these ripples. Now, to get rid of that ripple, here, all I do is I'll tighten this one a little bit. I'm going to tighten those around them. And there it's gone, okay? So there's not like massive adjustments to fix a minor problem, okay? And that feels right for me. Now you can, again, go around the head and tap. For me, that's not what I do with the bass drum stuff. And you guys, you know, haters might be hating, you guys might be, some of you guys might just, can't wait to comment and tell this guy how much he's doing this wrong. Well, listen to the drum. Does the drum sound good, or do you hate the sound of it? And do you think it's a result of poor tuning, that's the reason why you hate the sound of it? Or do you just don't like the way that I like to make my drum sound, or the way that my whole drum set sounds in that case, okay? And so for me, it's just personal preference. That's just the way I do it. Okay, so that sounds good. Now I'm going to take this drum, I'll put it down here. And now you guys will remember that I have that sheet on the inside, kind of, it's laying in the bottom of the drum, okay, up against that EMAD pad. Okay, so now I'm going to put this on the inside of the drum. Now this is a 5-inch hole cut into the side of this, and a lot of drum heads don't necessarily come with this hole. I'd recommend getting it. Sound guys are going to love you. Way easier to mic, and I find it's just easier to muffle and do stuff like that. So just be very careful when putting this in. Don't just throw it in there, but then you can actually position it, you know, up against the inside of this head, okay? You might even see it there. I always try and make it so you guys can't really see it. Like tricks of the trade right now. Okay? So that goes there, and then Victor's going to be happy because I can put this mic right in the drum. All right, so now I have my pedals here, and I'm just about to hook them up, but here's one more thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. Because, you know, I know a lot of you are heavy double bass drum players, or you just like wail the kick drum, and that's kind of the way I am. I like to practice a lot of double kick, a lot of bass drum focused stuff. And so Evans has this thing called EQ patch, and I like to put these on my drums. You'll notice in the last bass drum I had, there was almost an indent in it, and that's because when I first put on that EMAD head, I didn't use one of these, okay? And these are cheap. This is like $6. And so just put it on and or buy this along with the head, and you will not be sorry. Your bass drum head will last longer, okay? Okay, so here's what we're going to do here. I'm going to throw on the pedals, the Speed Cobras.
Blame myself 'cause
Tighten those up. Now I want to find out exactly where the bass drum beaters are landing, and I want this EQ patch to land right there, right beside them. Okay? So I'm going to take this off, the adhesive off. So now the EQ patch is on, and I'm ready to hear how this thing really sounds. So let's give it a hit. So at this point, I think it sounds unbelievable. Honestly, this is why I love Evans drum heads. It's not rocket science putting these things on or tuning them. But what I would do is I would talk to Victor in the next room and say, hey, Victor, how does that sound? Does it need a little bit more boom, a little bit more resonance, or does it have enough muffling? Should I have less? Should I have more? That sort of thing.
I think it sounds really good.
Okay, so you guys probably can't hear Victor, but he says he thinks it sounds really good. Now, one thing you guys can do with the EMAD is I could put the smaller ring in if I want. Okay, I don't necessarily have to. This has the bigger ring. Okay, I could put this one in, which is probably what I would do to get a little bit more body and a little bit more tone. Now, you don't all have the EMAD system, and that's fine. Evans makes other great batter side heads that you could just add or remove muffling from. Now let's hear how it sounds with a little bit less external muffling. Sounds pretty good. So unless you're in the room, I know it's hard to hear, exactly what the drum is sounding like or how the drum is changing and stuff like that. But I hope this gave you a good indication of how I tune my drums. For those of you guys asking about, how your drum sounds so good, your drum sounds so good. It's like I start with good drums, I put on really good drum heads, and then we have great mics and we run it through our whole audio system. Not putting tons of compression or tons of gating on them. Like the drums sound fairly organic and very, very acoustic, very, very much like they sound if you were in the room, to the best of our abilities. All right, so that is how I tune a bass drum. If you guys have any questions, no matter where you're watching this video, please just leave them in the comments below. Okay, I'm online pretty much every day. I would absolutely love to chat with you guys about this topic. If you have any tips to add, if you do it a little bit differently or you found some cool tricks that maybe I didn't touch on today, please just share them below. That's what this is all about, sharing information, drummers, teaching other drummers, and drummers having fun together. So thanks so much for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, so now I have I'm not gonna say all right. I'm gonna put this. Does it have enough muffling? Should I have less? Should I have more? That sort of thing. There's the old drum head. You can choose to do it with those